Louise says, ULEZ isn't happening in northern England necessarily, but look at Glasgow. It can cost 60 quid return to enter the city. There's no public transport after 11 o'clock. So anyone who bought a car on finance to travel to work last year now can't get to work using the car that they are paying the finance on. It is disgraceful. Well, you say that about these. Interesting. This is not just a London story, which is why we always cover this with a certain level of geographical confidence, because Birmingham, we know, so they call them the ULEZ zones or the LEZ zones, L-E-Z, low emission zones, or in some areas they call it the CAZ zone, clean air zones. There's one in Birmingham. Bristol as well came into force last November. Oxford have got a small version of this. Glasgow, 2018, I think theirs was introduced. Drivers of non-compliant vehicles can't pay to enter in the zone, and that's similar to Birmingham as well. So there's at least a bit more honesty in that. If you're not, I mean, in Sadiq's world, down in London, he's absolutely fine with you polluting as long as you pay for it. In some other areas, that isn't the case. Bath have a CAZ zone, Bradford as well. So there are parts of the north. Portsmouth, covering a small area. I think it's Portsea Island down there as well. Newcastle, commercial vehicles that don't meet the minimums have to pay a toll to drive in the city centre. Sheffield, again, motorbikes and private cars aren't affected, but commercial vehicles will have to pay a toll as well. Now, Manchester is interesting because they've long been planning a clean air zone, and it was, I think it was shelved last year, but it's now on hold. But I mean, watch this space. And other areas, Aberdeen, Dundee and Edinburgh, were expected to see clean air zones come into force in 2024. Make note, this is all over the place. So the cleaner we've got, the better cars are, the better we manufacture and build and construct buildings, everything you do in your own home. If you built a housing estate tomorrow, right bang in the centre or right near the centre of any of these cities, the regulations you would have to apply to constructing your housing estate are unrecognisable from regulations even 10 years ago. If you went back 30, 40, 50 years ago, they bear literally, it's a completely different thing that's going on there. In the way they're built, the way they're insulated, the way they're heated, the substances and the materials that are used, everything is different. So the whole game is moving anyway. And yet all of these councils, these statist, hysterical bureaucrats, can't think of anything better to do with their money than stick a camera up your trouser leg to monitor just about everything you're doing. I mean, that's the easiest way round it, isn't it? Don't worry, just get you to have your own camera pinned to your chest wherever you go. Stephen's in Blackpool. Stephen, on this very point, what are you thinking? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Thank you. Listening to a lot of your comments there about how things have progressed over the years.
Yeah.
For better off. I live in Blackpool, so some weeks back I will be looking at this at a distance, but as it's creeping up, there's a chance it's going to be in Preston City and Lancaster City.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, for the size of London is, you know, we call it Big London from up north, paying £12.50 doesn't make the air cleaner. Secondly, if you're in a ULEZ area, which I don't understand, if they put a sign up on the lamppost outside your house in the morning, does that mean every morning you wake up you have to pay £12.50 extra to drive out of your street?
Well, that's a good point. There was
within the bigger picture, for air, 0.04%, if my figures are right, is what the COT is of the atmosphere, of which UK produces 1% of that. Yeah. India produces, for example, 30. With the rocket ship, they've just produced a lot more than we're going to get rid of in the next year.
Isn't it interesting that we're...
So the scientists said, if it costs £1 million to send a litre of water to the moon, from our overseas budget, we've just sent 56 litres.
It's curious, isn't it, that we're talking about ULEZ and at the same time, you know, looking on in amazement as a rocket is launched into space with Lord knows what kind of guff comes out the back of one of those, much like aeroplanes for that matter.
It is. I remember we've just had the Blackpool Air Show, for instance, and after it's gone, you've still got the fumes coming off the coast. But I remember there's a similar thing. To me, from a distance, it's just making £12.50 a person off a day. If it's to stop people producing bad air in London, I can understand if it's to put people off. But if your journey daily is London, then it's just to make money. I do remember ages ago when people wanted to stop people parking in towns or cities, they suddenly put up parking bays and parking meters and cameras. It just appears to me it's another way under a label of fresh air or making places better.
Well, indeed.
Just to make money.
It also means that all of those politicians, and thank you for that, Stephen, it means all of those politicians can preen their environmental whiskers. I always imagine them at these kind of European conferences where they all get together and Sadiq gets big pats on the back from the Green Party of Bavaria and various other dignitaries that all shake his hand and press the flesh. Well done, Sadiq, you put the cameras up, you're catching the bad guys. One of the bad guys, people do things like stabbing and shoplifting en masse. I'd like to see Mr. Khan have as much emphasis. I've never heard him talk as much about teenagers dying by the blade as I have about him photographing cars that may or may not just go slightly over the arbitrary human dictated figure of what constitutes a polluting car. And there is a wider point as well about living on planet Earth. There's a bit of a deal we cut, right, with our existence on this planet. Is there such a thing as air pollution? Yeah, there is such a thing as air pollution, and some people who might have a respiratory condition will be affected by that. It doesn't mean to say that air pollution is because of the car. In some cases, I have no doubt about it, that if you lived in the 1970s next to the biggest major dual carriageway in your neck of the woods, then that's probably not good for anyone's health. You wouldn't stick your lips around the exhaust pipe of an Austin princess and expect to get away with it. We all understand that. But simultaneously, toxic air and air pollution comes from so many different sources, industry and domestic, to name the obvious. Down in the capital, as I mentioned at the beginning, the London Underground and the airport, 3 major airports in one city there, that would have an effect as well, particularly the Underground, where, and I think the story's still to come, by the way, out of what is going on the London. And that air makes its way above ground as well. You go above ground, you get your little air meter out and do a reading, and it's fine. It ticks all of the boxes. It's not knackered air. It's not polluted air. But even if there was, as our existence, our time on this planet, we have a trade-off, right? There's lots of things that ultimately you could say, well, that could do me harm. I mean, yes, of course it could do me harm. If I try to cut my toenails with a scythe, that will do me harm, potentially. Thank you, Blackadder, for that image. But I'm sure you take the point. There's all sorts of things. You have a big factory that produces amazing things, and there might be a component in what it produces that results in a small level of pollution. And we go, do you know what? It's not going to kill. It's not going to kill us. There might be a tiny amount of people that have an ill effect, and we will try and address that if we can. But we trade it off with progress of living in a civilized world, a world where stuff works, a world where we can do things, a social mobility, innovation, engineering, all of that kind of caper. So there is a trade-off there as well. Christine is in Weybridge. What are you thinking, Christine? Good afternoon to you.
Hello. Yes, I'd like to tell you a little story because I have been completely down the rabbit hole on all of this.
OK.
Now, I take it you've heard about the UN's Great Reset.
Well, some people say it's the UN's Great Reset. Some people say it's the World Economic Forum's Great Reset. Some people say it's the same thing.
Of them, it's the UN and World Economic Forum. Now, the UN's Great Reset is about making 15-minute cities, which...
Well, this is a sort of conspiracy. This is a conspiracy theory that some people put forward.
Yeah.
There's no proof of it, by the way.
No, Sadiq Khan has signed up London to be a 15-minute city.
Well, he hasn't, but anyway, go on.
Well, I've actually looked at the documents. It's listed on the documents.
He's signed up to make London a 15-minute city.
Yes.
Yeah, he hasn't, by the way.
If I looked on the UN documents the other day...
Oh, I'm sure there's a document online that says all sorts of things, but there's no such thing as a 15-minute city in that sense, other than the fact that some people have low-traffic neighbourhoods, and they're a nuisance as well. So I'd agree with that. It's all, this stuff is all kind of curious. But the idea that people are going to be locked up in their cities 15 minutes is not happening.
Not so saying they're going to be locked in, but the idea is everything's supposed to be within 15
When did
minutes.
Sadiq Khan sign this?
Yes, he signed London up for it.
Yeah, when did he sign it up?
I don't know when, but he's definitely listed as having signed up.
I'm sure I'm sure he's notionally in love with many ideas, but as we can establish here, I don't think there's any evidence that there is a document that signs you up for a 15-minute city, other than people saying it online.
No, there is a list. If you look at the UN, there is a list, and London is signed up to it. Now, that ties into the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, Klaus.
Klaus Schwab and all that, because
Schwab.
that then affects London's creditworthiness. It's a bit like Nigel and his creditworthiness for the bank.
Yes, yeah. Have you ever watched any David Icke, Christy?
Oh, we will lend you money for this and we'll lend you money for that. Which is why it then comes down to ULEZ, because he wants to put as many restrictions on people as possible.
Unless you pay £12.50, then you can mooch around all day long. Listen, Christine, thank you very much. It's always enlightening, and I'm never closed to an idea, but I can categorically tell you that the Mayor of London has not signed a United Nations document signing anybody up to 15-minute cities. There are some people who quite like the idea of them, by the way. And you can get by the way, 15 minutes, how far can you travel in 15 minutes? Depends where you're driving or how you go. You can get quite a long way away in 15 minutes. Unless you're in London, where you could just about get over a bridge in 15 minutes, especially at 4 o'clock. 034, thank you to Christine, 0344 499 1000.